of constructive criticism. I'm Mason Clark, and I will be your special host this week since Spencer's out doing Easter stuff, and I'm joined just like each and every week with Danny Cathro. Danny, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Not like as well as I could be doing, but good. I'm doing good.
And it's not bad, You know what else is doing well? Our sponsor, the Mana Base. You can go over to the Mana Base and check out content by Nikachu, us, and other up-and-coming people. Recently, Danny, I was streaming, which you can find at twitch.com/The Mason Clark, and my opponent was a salty Merfolk player, and I just told them you should go watch Nikachu's stuff. That way you can get better. And I hope that they got better thanks to the Mana Base. So check out the Mana Base. It has the Mason Clark, Slayer, Nikachu. It's got everything you want. You can also check out Game Grid. Game Grid is an awesome local store in Utah. You can go over there. You can play against the Danny Cathro, one of the 3 silver pros in Utah, and his amazing, amazing decks. Danny?
Yeah, I generally play hot piles of garbage when I'm at Game Grid, so it's very, very fun.
Tokens is pretty decent in standard right now, Danny. This is your time.
I need to cast more SRAM's expertise in my life.
That's what I was thinking.
The new type of tokens.
Mm-hmm. No, but jokes aside, welcome back for the limited time only. We're going to move on to biggest movers really quick. We're going to go through this kind of quickly. The format's kind of stale and happened, and Danny just got back from his RPTQ, so we have also a really exciting training grounds we want to get to. So Danny, let's start with your biggest mover down.
So my biggest mover down this week is Tetsamok. So I opened it at the RPTQ, and then I proceeded to get my butt kicked. So that means Tetsamok is not as good as advertised.
Yeah, I was under the impression that people, if you open that card, you go to the Pro Tour.
I was also under that impression, and then was quickly disappointed when I lost with that card.
Oh no!
Frequently, but so my first match I got it countered in like a pretty critical spot, and so that sucked. And then, but that was the only time I drew it all day rounds, and most of them went game 3, and I drew it once, and then towards the end I was doing really bad. I was playing for fun because Michael and Alex were still doing great, and so. I really wanted to draw more Tetsamok, so I sideboarded in a Mountain and a Forerunner of the Empire, just to try to increase my odds of being able to cast it. And it didn't work. I didn't draw the Forerunner either, so. But I was pretty disappointed with in my hand at the tournament.
Yeah, Tetsamok it doesn't seem like it performed. I was told Magic's a game of no skill, basically Hearthstone. If you open Tetsamok, you get there. So clearly, Danny Cathro defying the odds here. And showing us that even if you open Tetsamok, you can lose.
It was very disappointing.
Yeah. All right, well, I thought that was about as good as April Fool joke as we're ever going to get. But we're not actually going to do biggest movers up and down. Same reason as last week. The format's kind of late in its life, and we have an exciting training grounds we want to talk about. But we wanted to do a good April Fool's joke, and I think that was the best one we could have done. Ever. So, Danny, I have a question, Danny.
The April Fool's guy, but we tried, yes. Go ahead.
All right. Would you, if I promised you that you'd open another Tetsamok, would there's a 50% chance you open the same pool, would you run it back for the RPTQ? So you might get a new pool with Tetsamok, but there's a 50% chance you get that same pool.
I would take. No, I mean my pool is fine. I would take my pool again. It was totally reasonable.
I was just curious.
I have no complaints.
Awesome. I gotta say, by the way, even though you're lagging a little bit, we've had a lot of technical issues. If you're watching the video version, you'll see you'll see that Danny is a picture, not actually Danny this week. But we got him off the mechanical voice, so it's got to be better than that. So, but let's move on to our training grounds this week, Danny, because I think this is an exciting one. So you want to kind of take the reins here?
Yes. So, this at the RPTQ. I definitely made several mistakes, and I wasn't playing all the way up to my potential. As I was making mistakes, I was like, oh wow, I don't generally do that. I should definitely make sure that I'm not doing these types of simple errors. And I think we just wanted to kind of talk about that idea. It kind of inspired just a back to basics, where I just want to discuss some basic limited skills that really come up over and over and over again, where it's a good found to build on
Oh, I think we lost you. I think you were trying to say it's like a foundation.
Like your ability is limited, and I think it's like the foundation to help you other aspects of the game.
Okay.
It's
yeah,
a foundation for effects of limited, like a specific form
Okay.
or something. These are down and you can improve on.
Okay, we're gonna go to break. We'll be right back.
There.
Yeah. So we're back at that technical issues here, Danny. We kind of lost you there. Hopefully that got edited post. Let's just restart from the beginning here on this training ground since we weren't really in it.
Cool. That sounds great. So, like I was saying, at this tournament at the RPTQ, I wasn't playing like all the way up to my potential, and so I just like noticed some mistakes that I was making throughout the day, and some were costly, some weren't, and that's kind of how mistakes generally are. But it kind of inspired wanting to talk about going back to basics. There's like in limited, there's certain like key foundations that will help you get better regardless of the format or which deck you draft or the individual games that you're playing. Just kind of like general strategies and like, tactics that are really important to be able to have a successful time in limited. And so we just wanted to kind of highlight some ideas that we consider like basic foundational skills to have in limited.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta start with the foundation to build your pyramid, right? Can't just build the top half of it. Can't focus on just always opening Tetsumox like Lucky Danny Cathro. Sometimes you work on the basics. I love it.
Some people will like, oh man, I really don't understand this format, and it might not be the formats that is the issue, but that they're having maybe this format really is like a racing format, and like they're not very good at racing, and so this format feels really difficult to them because they aren't used to racing a lot. I don't know if that makes sense. But.
Yeah, and the opposite could be true as well too. It could be a format where all you want to do is sit back and do nothing, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and then that weakness won't come up, and so you won't realize it. But so the first one that I want to talk about is it's pretty basic, just mulligan decisions. I think it's a widely discussed topic because every game has mulligan decisions. It's one of the easiest, like cut and dry. You feel like there's a correct answer because it's just a numbers game, right? So if I show you a hand, I show you the makeup of my deck, tell you the matchup, like I should be able to like decide what the correct decision is. I don't know. How do you feel about mulligans? Like, do you ever like? It's pretty discussed, but like, do you feel like there's a right answer in most mulligan situations?
So I had a story prepared for this, Danny. Let's travel back to Team GP Indianapolis, where I teamed up with local friend Trey McLaren, and maybe you've heard this guy. His name is Silver Pro Danny Cathro. And my silver, it was funny. I think I said this out loud during one round, but I was like, you kept showing me one landers all day, and you had like a decent number of 2-drops, but you had like a bigger, or like a medium red white dino deck, and I kept telling you mulligan your one landers, right? and I got so frustrated at one point. I said out loud, like, I think it was to your opponent. I was like, I didn't think I'd have to tell my silver pro teammate to mulligan one landers 4 times today. But
they were good one landers.
to be fair, all your one landers were reasonable. It was just you were on 7. You can go to 6 and have much better hands. It was really frustrating.
They normally have like a Kinjali's Caller and a Raptor Companion. That's 2 spells, Mason. 2 whole spells.
Yeah, 2 spells. That's right. And a bunch of 4 drops. But to be fair, they were 3 drops. No, but yeah, I think generally, being more a little serious here, some hands are really tough, right? And I think limited makes that happen a lot more, where it's like 3 lands and 4 spells, but your spells are maybe like 4 drops and a little bit higher up. Especially like in this format, I see that happens to me a lot. Where like maybe I'll have like a Water Knot, and then I'll have Mistcloak Siren, I think it's named, the 3/2 with Raid and stuff like that. And I'll like have a 2 drop, and I'll be like, all right, or maybe something like a bigger dinosaur at the end. And it's like, all right, can I keep this hand or not? And you have to think about how your deck's built and how the games play out. But yeah, I think generally there is like a correct mulliganing, and I think mulliganing is a huge skill in Magic, and it's one that you can work on whenever you play, because you're always mulliganing, which is great.
Yeah, like you get like 2 or 3 opportunities to at least every single match to like make meaningful mulligan decisions. So I think one reason why limited mulligan decisions are a little more difficult than constructed is because of the difference in power level between some of your cards. So in constructed, if my hand has lands and spells, I generally can keep, which is probably similar, it's probably the same in limited. But like, let's say I have a sketchy hand, but it has Tetsamok in it, then this is like that hand is much better. Like, I'm way more willing to keep it, just because like if it's 5 lands Tetsamok and like a 4 drop, I'm like, oh no, I mean, if I just make it to if I make it to Tetsamok, I'll probably win. So it's definitely like whereas that's not like a thing that comes up in constructed very often, like that huge gap in power level.
Exactly, yeah. You don't normally have like one card that is so much better, most likely, than your opponent's entire deck, that you can keep your hand because that card's in your hand. I think that exact hand you described was a hand we had at the GP, where like I had a Tetsamok hand. It was like a Molda 6 with 5 lands Tetsamok, and we were like,
yeah,
what else are we gonna
do?
Yeah,
like we didn't sign up to not keep that hand. Like, why would you ever?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's interesting too, because one of the things that's super interesting about limited is that in constructed, I think basically up until you get to like 5 and below, so like 6 and 7, I think you can get away with, and then once you hit 5, you're kind of like you're still in it, but once you get below that, you're like kind of out of it.
Yeah.
And then in limited, when you hit 5, you're really struggling. If that makes sense.
So there was a pretty crazy example. So in the semis, only 2 people qualified at the RPTU, and in the semis, Michael's opponent mulliganed to 4 game 1 and almost won the game. Like, so game 1, mulliganed to 4 on, I don't remember if they're on the player draw, but like I think they missequenced their spells and actually would have won the game if they had played in a certain, like if they had taken a certain line, like on a mulligan to 4 against a 7-card hand for Michael. And then Michael was like, yeah, once I almost lost that game, I kind of wasn't feeling great about the match, because it was just like a really bad matchup for him, and he didn't wind up winning. But it shows like you can make mulligan decisions, go all the way down to 4 or 5. Like you want to give yourself the best chance of winning. If your 5 won't win, then you can go down. Like you have some percentage of chance of winning.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting thing too. I'm curious. I want to hear your take on this. It's a little bit off the script here, but one of the things I'm always thinking about when I'm playing Magic is, how am I going to win this game, right?
Yep.
Like, when I'm super far behind, when I'm more far ahead, I think about how am I going to lose it. But most of the time, my general thought always comes back to, all right, but how do we win? So is that something you think about a lot?
For sure. Like, with mulligan decisions, that comes up a lot, right? Like, if you have a 6 that's like 4 lands, a 5 drop, and a 6 drop, you're like, well, I mean, so if I draw runner, like, I could curve out and I could win this game. But is that, like, what does my deck composition look like? Let's say that I have Wanted Scoundrel, One with the Wind. Like, maybe I'm just better off trying to go to 5, draw a curve and a One with the Wind, and win that way. It's like, depending on what's in your deck, you can make different decisions based on, like, what type of game your deck can win.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. I also think that, like, the worst thing you can do is say something. I mean, I hope most of our listeners know this, but never ever say, like, never have your reason to be, well, I've mulliganed enough today, or I'm not going to four, right? Because I do think, like, just like Danny's story, like, you can win on mulligans to four in limited. It's way harder than it is in constructed. Like, in constructed, you could go 2-land snake Hadana climb and win the game, but in limited, that kind of stuff doesn't really happen because you don't have the powerful enough cards. But I think you should always be, like, aware of that kind of stuff when you're mulliganing. That makes sense.
Yeah, like, this was, like, qualifying for the Pro Tour, and he could have won a, like, maybe not guaranteed, but he definitely was in a position that he could win on a mulligan to four, which is crazy, right? Like, and it happens for sure.
Yeah, definitely. You always have those potentials here. And one of the things that we wanted to also talk about was just taking your time with mulliganing. The entire game kind of gets sculpted by those mulligans.
Yeah,
like the hands you do and the hands you don't.
Yeah, I snap things off way too fast most of the time. So like I think this is something that I could personally work on, is just like
Danny accidentally put me on hold. There he is. All right, we're back.
Yeah. So just think about what could occur, and like think about how your hand lines up, what you're going to play, just so that you don't make a bad decision just out of the blue.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's one thing where sometimes I'll it's weird where I look at hands and I instinctively know if I should keep them or not a lot of the time, like the easy ones, right? Like the good and the bads. Yep. But it would take me a second to actually tell you why those hands are good and bad, which is like a weird internalized thing that I think LSV's brought up a lot on LR, but it's just a weird thing I noticed. But let's move on. I think
it's just better to just take a second. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was about to say, we definitely don't want to we're trying to move on in the conversation because we have a lot of other things to talk about, but definitely take your time to think about the hands.
As we rush through it.
As we rush through it. It's not something we can say a lot about, except that you're allotted all this time. If you play fast, you it's really hard to hit time unless you play really slow. I don't know how people hit time, but you can afford to take a couple minutes. Same thing for sideboarding, which we didn't actually put down here, but I think that's a big thing, is to take the time to look at your sideboard, especially unlimited and sealed.
Yep. Yeah, sealed you have a lot of options for sure. But so the second thing that we did have to talk about was sequencing. So this is kind of like a broad topic where it's just thinking about how you play the cards in your hand. And so a simple example is land, which land to play first. So normally, it's straightforward. A lot of most games, I would say it doesn't really matter what lands you play first, as long as you play your tapped ones when you aren't going to use the mana, right? There's the easy stuff like that. But I had an interesting example come up where I was on the draw, and my hand had a forest, 2 swamps, a green 2-drop, and some other cards, right? And my opponent plays a card or plays land pass, and then I just get in the habit of I always play the land that matches my 2-drop, just so that I don't accidentally not play that land and not be able to cast my 2-drop. I don't know. But so I just play a forest pass. And then I realize that I have Walk the Plank in my deck. And if I, let's say that he cast a Wanted Scoundrels and I draw Walk the Plank, I'm going to regret not playing the swamp a lot, because that's there's no reason why I need to play the forest. I can very easily play the swamp and then play the forest the next turn. And so it's just all upside to play the swamp first, just in case I draw Walk the Plank and he plays a 2-drop. And he actually did play a good 2-drop that I would have Walked the Plank if I had drawn it. But I didn't draw Walk the Plank, so I wasn't punished that time. But as he played the 2-drop, I was like, oh, if I draw Walk the Plank here, I'm gonna feel like such a dummy. And it's just a simple thing like that of just thinking about what land you play before you just slam it down.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Considering what you could draw and what your plays could be, I think an example I had before is, I forget the name of it, but it's the Flash Merfolk with Hexproof. That's green. Yeah, Swift Warden, where it's I played I was playing a 4-color deck, and I had the Swift Warden in my deck. My deck was really bad. I don't want to talk about it. But but basically I could have played a forest on the early turns and then set up to guarantee to play that. But instead, and I could also play island or a mountain to play to my other cards I could draw into. But instead, I played one of those other lands, and it was oh, and now I'm locked into playing forest. Where before I could have gone forest into whichever 2-drop I wanted to play if I drew one right,
Yeah.
etc. So
Yep.
those kind of things
Yeah.
do come up.
They definitely do. So it's not just with your land. Like that's like one of the more basic examples.
Mhm.
Another like sequencing thing that comes up all the time is just which phase to cast your spells in. So by default, people play. So most new players by default just play everything in the first main phase and then attack and then they're done. And then at some point, I don't know when, but a lot of players switch over to I will always play it second main phase and like even like do the thing where like go to combat. Okay, yeah, I'm not attacking with anyone. Play this just to like see if they do anything, right? And like I think that's like in general a good idea is to like the second main phase is normally better because you can hold up mana for tricks and stuff. But I saw a really interesting line that Alex Sittner took at the RPTQ. I was watching him play one of his matches, and his opponent had a Swift Warden and in his hand and mana to cast it, and Alex had seen it, so he could be relatively confident that Swift Warden was it was an option, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his opponent had a Gilt Grove Stalker.
Yep.
Okay, the 2/1
can be blocked.
Yep. And then Alex had 2 Menace creatures. Okay? And he had shown him Lookout's Dispersal already, which is the if you have a pirate, counter target spell unless they pay 4, right?
Okay.
It costs 2 if you have a pirate, 3 if you don't. And so Alex decides to main phase and then the critical part is that Alex had Fanatical Firebrand in his hand. So the 1-drop that can ping, right? And so Alex decides to main phase Sailor of Means and then says, like, treasure, right? And so he got his opponent to think, like, okay, well, I don't want him to get this treasure because then I will get Lookout Dispersal, right?
Yeah.
And because it would be his second mana. Like, the treasure was his second mana. And so he got him to respond to the treasure with Swift Warden, and then he just decided to give Swift Warden Hexproof. And then he got to play Fanatical Firebrand, ping the 2/1, and hit him for 5 damage that turn. Where he would have gotten, like, he would have traded off one of his Menace creatures and gotten, like, 2 damage instead of 5. And so just by playing the Sailor of Means main phase, knowing that his opponent could have a Swift Warden and could like respond in that way, he like timed his spells correctly, got in 5 points of damage and not trade instead of trading, which is like way better for him. And so it's like a huge swing, all from just like a simple sequencing thing of like knowing which spell to play first and how to like correctly bait out what your opponent has. It was a really good play that I saw.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I like that play a lot. A thing onto this too is, you talk about like at the beginning of that story the cycle of like a Magic player and how at the beginning they always play their spells, and then I would say that it's not even main phase 2, people play their spells at the last moment possible all the time.
That's true. Yep.
Yeah. Even when like main phase 2 like might just be as well as end phase, they'll wait till end of turn. And one of the things I think is important is knowing when to play your instance as a sorcery, right?
Yeah.
So I think that like more so in Constructed comes up as like you'll see bolt a creature into turn, but sometimes you just want to bolt the creature on your turn so they don't have a chance to untap and protect it. And like maybe
or like upkeep is a really common place to do it, because if let's say your opponent is playing control and then you have like you're playing a control mirror or something, and then you have Glimmer and you'd like for it to resolve and you don't know if they have a counter, right? And so you do it on their upkeep so that they didn't get to use their mana for the last turn, and they don't get an opportunity to draw the counter spell if they didn't already have it. So that's another, like, a very common timing for your spell.
Yeah, it also makes them tap out with less information, too, right? So if they do have, like, a disallow in hand, it's like, well, if I disallow this, I can't
Then what's going to happen next turn?
Yeah, exactly. So that's definitely one of the bigger ones, too. One of the things that's really interesting to me with sequencing is, like, moving to damage. Does that make sense?
No, I saw one. Michael did one of those where like you move to damage first and then do something after damage has already happened. So yeah. So in that example, he had a Slash of Talons and he had a 2/2 that was blocking a 4/4, right?
Okay.
And then so he's like, okay, sure, yeah. Well, like jump your 4/4. Okay, damage. All right, end of combat, slash of talons to kill the 4/4. So like that plays around something like Sure Strike or like Sure Strike's the main one that it plays around, where Sure Strike would save it if he slashed before damage was done, but it doesn't save it if he does it after.
Yeah, Divine Verdict could also
like,
be one, but yeah, I don't know that guy's colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really it was definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, Divine Verdict on the blocker. Yeah, that would also work. But and those types of things come up a lot, and so I think a lot of it is just kind of getting in reps and familiarizing yourself with those types of plays. And like when you see a play like that, it kind of sticks with you, and so it's just playing enough games that you see those things, and then when the opportunity presents itself, knowing that that's like a line that is available to you. And for me, I think a lot of it is just practice. Not everyone's like this, but the more I'm playing Magic, the more natural these lines of play are, and it's really easy to know when I need to upkeep a spell or when I need to instep it or main phase it, and like all those different little decisions that might be difficult in the moment. A lot of it you can offload onto like, this just feels right because I've played this format enough to know what I need to play around and things like that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think there's definitely like a reason they say you should like get Moto and play Magic all the time. Just get better when you play Magic a bunch. Like only the true greats like PV and Finkel can like not play until the Pro Tour or like the week before the Pro Tour and then like win the Pro Tour, right? You have to reach like that certain level where there's not like things you can still be like. They can obviously still learn and improve on stuff, but they've got so much of it so like mastered that they can go in and do that kind of stuff. Where like
it's true.
Yeah, people like us like I need to play a league every day, right? Like that's just the quickest way to improve, get better, and stay on top of it. So
yeah, we had this similar conversation where like someone like John Finkel might not practice a lot, but at one point in his life he practiced more than I ever have practiced, right? Like he's just been working on these skills that I am still working on for years and years, and so even though he might not, yeah, exactly. Like someone was the first one to think of like, oh yeah, I should do this spell on their upkeep because that uses their mana level, right? Like like sometimes I feel like I came up with those like I'll come up with a cool play, but like someone else has thought of it, and like if you practice enough and then like absorb enough information, you can like learn a lot of these like tricks of how to just sequence your spells.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy, right? Like think about, and let's just like even use someone like Spencer for example, right? Spencer's been playing now for like I think 9 years is what how long he's been playing. Maybe it's 10, but regardless, like he's played for a long time. Think about the information you and I take for granted that like Spencer just didn't get to know, right? Because we didn't have someone like that, like we didn't have podcasts all the time we can listen to. We didn't have articles like he did back then. Like even 9 years ago, there weren't as many articles and information. Now you're like at a, and everyone says this at their time, but like a golden age of Magic, right? Where you have all this information, you have all these podcasts, all these articles, all these like Twitch streamers. Like you could not play Magic, but still
and consume like infinite Magic content. It's crazy. It really is like unbelievable.
That's what I did for my Modern RPTQ. Like I didn't play a whole lot of Modern. I played 0 Modern with the deck I played at the RPTQ, right? Up until like I think I hadn't played in like 3 weeks, but I watched a bunch of other Modern decks and I got like a good feel for everything. So like I was able to, when they came up in those rounds, I was able to get to the position to go to the Pro Tour if I had beat the Shadow player. But regardless, like I knew so much about Modern because I'd watched all these different streams and stuff. And I think for formats like, I think Limited is a good example, especially if you don't consider yourself like a good Limited or Sealed player. Watching someone like Kenji, watching LSV, Marshall, Ben Stark, for Lord's sake. Ben Stark just started doing videos like a year ago. Think about that. Like, we get to watch Ben Stark play like basically every other week. But you can watch those players and absorb stuff from them, and it's like, I don't know if you do. You're probably past this in your life, but like I've definitely watched videos, paused when their turn started as soon as I saw the card draw. Right, I have the video muted. I think about what I would do, then I unmute, unpause, watch until we get to combat, stop, think about what I would do, and like you can walk through the gameplay like with the videos. So I think we
that sounds like a great thing. I haven't done that, but like that sounds like a very good idea. And there's like it's like the what's the play, but just kind of taking a video as a what's the play.
Yeah, exactly. And like they might not even make the right play, but the fact that like I took the time to like stop and think about it and then they in the videos normally they will explain their thought process. So it can be like reassuring, or it can be eye opening, where it's like maybe I would have slashed their talons beforehand, and then watching Michael's video on CC or whatever, and Michael's like, "Yep, so we're gonna attack," and then end of combat. It's like, "Oh yeah, there's an end of combat step," but no one ever uses that, you know.
Yep.
So I might lose to the sure strike, where Michael never loses the sure strike. So it's cool
Yeah,
things
exactly.
like that. You can glean a lot of information.
For sure. Yeah, so moving on, I think another aspect of limited that comes up a lot is it's kind of like a common phrase, but know when you're the beatdown, or like who's the beatdown is like, I don't know who coined it, but it's definitely like an old school
It's
phrase.
Mike Flores. But I was about to say, speaking of like people figuring stuff out, that's something people didn't know like what to do. Like the idea of like who's the beatdown, that's considered one of the best Magic articles of all time because it changed the game for so many people, and that's something that you and I are taught like first day when you play Magic. At least
Yeah,
for me,
like
I was taught like pay attention to like what your role is supposed to be.
Yep.
So
Yeah, and it makes so much sense. Like, I think in Constructed, you take it for granted because, like, I build a mono red aggro deck. Okay, like 90-something% of my matches, except for the mirror, I'm going to be the aggressor, right?
yep.
I build a blue black control deck. I'm going to be the defender, right? Like, and in Constructed, every once in a while, it'll come back to bite you. Like, you'll be the blue black control deck, and you're supposed to be getting in there with your Scarab God, and you like don't because you forget that like you can attack or whatever. Right? Like every once in a while it comes up, yeah. Like, but it's pretty rare that you make that mistake in Constructed, and it comes back to bite you. But in Limited, it happens all the time. Like if my opponent plays a 2-drop and I don't have a 2-drop, all of my decisions change. Like how, like whether I play my 3-drop or use a removal spell on, or whether I like
Mark of the Vampire
like,
this thing instead of Solder Outlets.
Exactly. Yeah, like there's you have so many different options because every game you have a surprising number of options, and whether or not you're on the attack or on the defense will greatly change what the correct decision is in that situation.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that goes along with that is like going back to something I said at the beginning, where it's like, how do you win, right? Like if you look at the battlefield, and maybe this is game 2, right? And you saw your opponent had a Nezahal game 1, but you Divine Verdict because they just didn't have enough cards in hand, right? It's like, all right, well if this game goes super long, I probably can't beat this Nezahal. It's just bigger than my deck, and like my deck's just weak against this kind of card. So I need to be attacking in the air, right? Or I need to be getting in this early damage now. And stuff like that I think is really important. I mean that goes with like who's the beatdown and whatnot, but I think playing to like win the game and thinking about how the game will play out is super important.
Yeah, I think
being active.
That relates a lot to like racing situations.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite parts of Limited is racing. Like I'll say this to my opponent a lot, is when they attack me and then I don't block and I attack them back. Like I always am like, it's race. And like I just think it's so fun to like because one of us is wrong. So like I think that I'm right by not blocking and attacking them, and they think they're right by not blocking and attacking them. And it's like this game of chicken to decide who actually has the information that matters. Like, does my moment of triumph, is that what's going to break the parity, or do they have like a removal spell, or do they have a flash creature that I'm not expecting, right? And so any like racing situations are super like relatively common. I think far more common than in Constructed. You almost never get them in Constructed, really.
Yeah.
I mean, like flyers is the only way that they really come up.
Yeah, it's like mono red mirrors is like the situation I think of, where it's like like green red monsters, where it's like attack with my Phoenix and your Phoenixes, and it's like cool blocks attack back.
Yeah,
so, yeah, definitely.
And then, I think like just if that's just it comes down to practice, right? Like if you're in a racing situation and you're not as familiar with the format or with your own deck or just like racing in general, then you're going to be at a big disadvantage to someone else that is familiar with the format and knows what cards to expect. And so when you're prepping for a tournament, if you like, that's like something that playing lots of games can help a lot, because you'll know that like what Moment of Craving could do to the race, or Moment of Triumph, or like lots of different things, right?
Definitely.
And I think it just that like basically just like it's so fun. I really, like those are some of my favorite games of limited, and they're pretty short most of the time. But I feel like
you're racing.
yeah, you're really racing. But like it's just fun because you look back and like, all right, did I make the wrong decision? I mean, like if you win the race, then you feel like you made the right one. But if you lose, it's like, well, maybe that was my only out. Like maybe I couldn't beat his deck if I didn't do that. And it goes back to like the how am I going to win this game? And some games you'll be losing, but you're like, all right, I have to attack you because I have to hope to draw Buccaneers Bravado. That's my only way to win. And so, like, playing to those outs is, you can get a lot of percentage points by that, for sure.
Definitely. I really like that. Do you want to move on to this last part here?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this one is probably the one, like, one of the more, like, vague but pretty ubiquitous things where just be honest in your self-evaluation. Like, at the RPTQ, I recognize, like, I played pretty poorly. I mean, I'm, like, maybe I'm being a little harsh on myself or whatever, but, I definitely should have played the Swamp first. That's, like, a very simple mistake. Like, it didn't come back to bite me, but...
But it could have.
Yeah, like, 1 out of 30 games, it would have come back to bite me. And so, like, if that situation happened 30 times, then one of those times it would, like, I would be max punished, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, like... It's like 3% or something. And like let's say that was like the decider of whether or not I could win that game. And like it's just I don't know, there's lots of and that's one that I noticed. And I think with honest self-evaluation, you have to be willing to point out your own mistakes and like look actively for them because if you're not actively seeking to improve, you can tread water for years at Matic.
Yeah.
Like
oh my gosh, yeah.
you can tread water indefinitely. Like I think you have to take an active role in your improvement, or you won't make substantial changes in your game.
I 100% agree and concur with that. I played a Legacy local event this past weekend, and round 1 I played against Lanza's Death and Taxes, and I beat my Lands opponent, which is like it's like it's a weird matchup, but like afterwards I was like I played so bad that round. Like, I gave him so many chances to top deck me. And part of that is, like, I just haven't played the matchup a lot. But, like, if I just taken the time to think about stuff and whatnot, I could have, played around those situations. And being honest with myself and, like, okay, I need to, like, even though I won that round, I shouldn't have, like, most times when we run that back, I don't win if I play like that. I need to tighten up, I need to play better, and I need to take these things going forward when I play against lands, right? I need to be more conservative with my wasteland. Like, I got to play around Tabernacle more. It was a situation where, like, I just, like, wastelanded a Thespian stage. It's like, that Thespian stage wasn't doing much. Like, I had a Swords in hand. I could just hold it for Tabernacle, which is going to, like, constrict my mana for the rest of the game. And he played Tabernacle the next turn, and I was like, dang it, I'm losing 3 mana every turn. Like, I drew enough lands, and they didn't have a loam going, so I was able to get out of it. But it was, like, really upsetting in the moment. And I did a lot of things beyond that, too. But, yeah, I think... Yeah. I think if
you could like just a wasteland away from being in a lot of trouble, right? Like,
yes.
Like they could exactly.
Yeah, well, even if they just go like, there's just a million things, right? So it's like I killed the Thespian stage because it's part of the combo, but I had the combo checked. So it's like, why am I doing this? And this card isn't good in this matchup, and it's like literally the only thing it's good at is stopping the combo. So why am I using this card that's good against their entire deck to stop something that I have the answer to? And it's like, if you just take a second to, like, really think about it, it's like, oh, yeah, that's just really, really bad. Like, you should never make those kind of mistakes,
Or if you don't have that, like that mindset that you're trying to improve, then you could very easily be like, oh, so lucky they drew the Tabernacle. They would have played that last turn. Right? Like, like, it's so easy to say that. Like, oh, wow, you so lucky. And, I mean, like, there's a time and place for everything, right? Like, you can make the right decision, and then they get lucky, and then you get punished, right? But, so you have to be honest with yourself. Like, sometimes there's nothing you could do, you made the right choice. It's fine. But, at the same time, you also need to be looking for opportunities to get better. And I think...
Always.
Yeah, you'll be much safer criticizing yourself than not until you're, like, pretty deep down the rabbit hole. Like...
Yeah, if you're going to do a point where you're like, I probably should have Evolving Wilds to, like, get that land out of my deck, because I don't really want my landfall trigger to happen, because then I expose myself to Triumph. And I don't want that to happen, so Legion's Judgment, so it's like, that, yeah. And it's like, all right, well, hang on, you're getting a little deep there,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like, or even just, sometimes you'll get punished from, like, you'll make, like, a correct, like, let's say a mulligan decision. You keep a 3-lander that has 4 spells, and you never draw a 4th land, you're like, oh, man, maybe I should have mulliganed. No, like, your hand was fine, you just didn't draw a 4th land, that's fine. So, like, in those types of situations, you don't need to be hard on yourself, but I think generally, at least bringing up the question whether or not the answer is yes or no, you made a mistake, is what matters. Because then you're just thinking about it and you're being active in your improvement.
Yeah. And you should always assume you're wrong at the start. Like, even in that situation where it's 3 lands, 4 spells, your first thing should be like what Danny said, where you're saying you're too hard on yourself, but then you should be like, okay, no, that was right, and then you can move on, you know?
Uh-huh.
And I think another thing about being honest with yourself is being, like, honest in the moment. Like, if you take my Legacy game, for example, where it's like, yep, that play was really bad, I'm, like, upset, but I don't let that... So, I have a lot of friends
you can move
that
on
deal
from
with
there.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. I have a lot of friends that deal with tilt, and one of the things I told one of them, I said it off the top of my head, and I really love it, so I keep saying it over and over again, is you have the rest of your life to be upset about that Wasteland play. You do not have the rest of your life to win this game of Magic. So, spend the 30 minutes here, and then the rest of the time, think about what you could have done better. Think about all that kind of stuff. So, you know, even when you make these mistakes, make note of them and think about them later and how you could have done better. But don't spend your brain power in that game thinking about that, because you're already down. So you don't need to be down brain power. You don't need to be getting upset. You just need to be focusing on how you can actually win the game.
I'm just thinking of the infamous Hazoret play where he drew lethal and then like missed it, right?
Yep.
But and like he was clearly frustrated, right? Because it was like a mistake that definitely cost him, right? But once he regained his composure after a few seconds, he's like, okay, I haven't lost yet. Like, just because I miss lethal doesn't mean I'm dead, right? I can still block his Hazoret. Like, and then he like looked for the line that would remedy the situation from there, right? He could have and I actually think like you made a very reasonable play based on the situation that he was in. And other people might have I'm so flustered, go, like, I'm dead. Like, or just burn face, oh, look, I left myself lethal on board, right? Like, there's so many different options that he could have had that he actually was like, okay, like, let me take my time, all right, what am I at? All right, I obviously need to draw something good again, but, like, I'm going to give myself that chance despite the fact that I made a mistake.
Yep, 100%. I really like that. Yeah, I don't know. You're never going to get good at something if you're not honest with yourself of mistakes. And so I think that's all there is to really say about that. I don't have anything else to say. Do you?
One thing that I was just going to mention is I think anytime I'm playtesting, I will sometimes get into like a lull where I'm just goofing off, right? And that's fine. Like having fun is
keep going though.
Yeah, having fun is totally fine. Like I love doing some vintage
not
cube.
Fine, Danny. Don't lie to me.
I love doing vintage cube and trying to like just draft broken stuff and like goofing off. Right? Like I can enjoy that. I can play some Commander and like just relax and enjoy myself. But if I'm gonna start practicing for a tournament, like if I'm gonna be playing like a sealed deck in preparation for an RPQ, if I'm gonna be testing standard in prep for GP, like I don't want to be just goofing off, right? Like I want to make sure that my preparation is like an active preparation, like considering like, okay, how did I sideboard in this matchup? Why am I sideboarding like this? Like when I draw a card that sucks, all right, why is it in my deck? Should it be in my deck? Should I sideboard this out? Like going through those thought processes as you're testing is huge, because it's really easy to put in a bunch of hours just jamming and not improve at all. But what were you going to talk about?
So it has to do with that. So you and I both like to watch Smash, Super Smash Bros. Melee, right?
Oh yeah, I love. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, hang on, quick. Who's your favorite player again?
So I like a bunch of them, but it's probably like Mango. Mango's great.
All right, I learned that Jerry Thompson likes Leffen, and I was like, oh no, you're one of my favorite Magic players, and we're like diametrically opposed in Melee.
Yeah, I don't know. You like Hungrybox, right?
I love Hungrybox. Don't at me.
He is the ultimate villain.
No, Leffen's the ultimate villain. That's fake news. I All right. Hang on. I swear this is the time to make you better at Magic. I watched 30 minutes of video today about how Leffen was a villain. I watched all these clips from back when he was doing really well. I don't like Leffen.
Mm-hmm. So my roommate Corey Crowfoot, he was a huge Hungrybox fan, and then he met Hungrybox. Hungrybox was a complete jerk. I mean, maybe Hungrybox is not like that. Maybe he was having a bad day. Like that happens, right? And then he is no longer a Hungrybox fan. He's joined Dingo Nation.
Listen, so. I hope that Hungrybox isn't like that, but like his playstyle and the way don't worry, whatever. We need to start a Melee podcast. That's the Patreon goal for this. Regardless, he's my favorite. If you at me on Twitter, I'll talk about him for hours. I'll tag him. I tagged him in Jerry's post about Leffen. But what I was gonna say is one of the things that I learned from the Smash doc that never even occurred to me is there was this really, really great player back in the day called Korean DJ, and he was freaking terrible at Melee. But what he did is he would go to big events and he would money match people. What a money match was is they would each put up $5, winner takes all the money, and he would challenge the best player in the room. He'd be like, Hungrybox, money match me, $10, and he'd be like, all right, and he would just kept losing and losing and losing, and it was a way to make his like fun games actually impactful. So what I was going to ask you is, have you ever thought about money matching in Magic? Because this is something I thought about recently, where it's like I caught myself doing what you were talking about, where it's like I'm supposed to be playtesting and like actually trying, but I'm in a lull. Maybe I should just be like, hey man, let's play.
You're on autopilot, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like let's.
Michael and I were talking about this actually. I think it's probably like I don't know what the rules are about it, so I'm uninformed in that regard.
So just for the record, I haven't done it yet, but it's definitely gambling, and I don't think Watsy likes the idea of it. But that being said, you could also make a friendly wager on buy lunch, right? Whoever loses.
There's a lot of friendly wagers are definitely great. I know like the Matt Nass stream is always friendly wagers on whether they can go 3-2 with hot piles. Like
that's my favorite streamer, by the way. He's the only one I'm subscribed to on stream. He's awesome.
It's amazing. Yeah. And I feel like maybe if you need to do something like that to motivate yourself, or like keep a running tally of who's winning and stuff, like that seems totally reasonable. I like whatever you need to do to make sure that you're testing actively. But I think a lot of it is just self-recognition. Like if you are paying attention to how you're testing, then you'll start testing better. It's just once, like I'm sure for you probably are like playtesting, and you're like, well, I like didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
I need to start learning something, right? And then, but once you realize that, then you'll start paying more attention and you'll improve at playtesting, right?
Definitely.
And so, what steps you need to take in order to make that happen? It's kind of like teach their own, I think. But
so there's like another example of this where like, and after this we're ended, I promise. But so one thing I'll do is at locals, like a lot of times you split with the person in the last round of like a local event, right? You're just like, yep, split in the top 8 or top 4, and we're gonna split the money and go home. And one thing I'll do is if I get paired in a situation where I could scoop to someone, right? This happened last week where I was the only undefeated. I could scoop this guy in, and I had every plan to, and I told him I'm not scooping to you because I wanted to practice that matchup, and I know that if I had said, hey Scott, let's play, like I'll scoop to you, but let's play, he wouldn't try as hard.
Yeah.
But if there's $30 on the line, Scott's gonna play as hard as he can. And then as I attack for lethal, I'm like, you win. So like,
no, that's a great idea. Like if you're at that event, like I mean, partly to have fun with your friends or whatever, right? But partly like to get better, right? And so
especially with a weird matchup you don't know.
Exactly, like he's on blue white gift, and you're like, man, I really need to learn this matchup. That deck like popped off on the mocks, right? Like I want to see how this game plays out. Mm-hmm. And you're totally right. If you're like, let's split and play for fun, neither of you care. You're both keeping horrible starting hands, right? Like,
I hate when they do that. I'm like, hey, let's play test. And they're like, I would never keep this, but.
Exactly. And then you're like, well, this is stupid. If you draw 2 lands, then obviously your hand's going to be broken. But if you don't, then like we're just going to quickly move on to the next game because you don't care, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting. Like, I think that's a great idea. Like, even I have a friend that he says that you should always just play it out, and like there's time restraints and stuff, so that's not always feasible. But his idea is like when you're at a GP, you're not just gonna split, right? Like you're not gonna get to the last round of a GP and be like, oh, let's split and go home. Like you're gonna like play it out, right? Like you have to play for the pro points, you gotta play for the money. And if you're used to just in every high high pressure situation. Let's say that you're like in a win a box and you're like in the finals, you guys could split the box, or you guys could play for a whole box, and then it's kind of like a high pressure situation, right? And if you always back out of it, then once you actually get in that situation at a Grand Prix or an RPTQ, then you're just like used to backing out. I don't know.
Yeah, I know this is the last thing, but so I always offer a rearrange of the prize structure in the finals of a PBTQ, right? Where I say first place gets the invite. Well, I say I would like to rearrange the prize structure in such a way that first place gets the invite and second place gets the remainder of the prizes. And I have found that normally my opponents play much more lax because a lot of the time I don't think my opponents want the invite as much as I do, and they're like, well, if Mason beats me, I get like $200 in
two box. Yeah, I get like 2 boxes of cards. Yeah.
And then if you lose, like I recently lost to Heath Vance at a PPDQ like 3 weeks ago, who had just like top-aided GP Memphis with Blue Black, and I lost the mirror. And it's like, well, it sucks that I lost, and like I learned a lot from doing this, but I also walked away with 2 Tarmogoyfs, 3 packs of sleeves, and a drink for Trey. So
exactly,
was it really that bad? You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, it makes you feel way better, but he also feels great.
Exactly.
I had a similar situation happen, but then I was like, would you like to rearrange the prizes such that the winner gets the invite and the loser gets the rest of the prizes? And they're like, yes. I was like, perfect, I'll concede. I'm almost silver, so I don't need the invite.
Yeah.
And then he's like, wait, I got gypped.
Oh, that's so good. So they were going to scoop to you?
Like, he's like, wait, I wanted the invite, but I feel like I could have gotten some. And I'm like, I mean, I'm taking like a small risk. I'm like obviously not invited currently, but I'm just like doubling down on the fact that I'm going to get silver.
Yeah,
so.
And then you top-aided the GP. That's right. I remember now.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. That's just a good guy, Danny Cathro, getting some value.
I mean, like if we didn't rearrange it like that, I would have played and he could have lost. So it's definitely like good value for him to like guaranteed win, right?
Yeah.
But
oh my goodness.
It was funny. He was fine with it, but
yeah, that's funny. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our training grounds this week. I really like this training grounds. I hope you all as well like this training grounds. If you like this show and this training grounds and you feel like you want to get back to the show, you can go to patreon.com, and I believe it's LTO is the Patreon. Do you know the actual information for the patron? It's either LTO or limited time only. Oh, I think it's LTO MTG is what it is.
Correct. That sounds correct.
So LTO MTG, you can go there. The show will always be free, but if you felt like we've given back to you and you wanted to give back to us, we will greatly appreciate it. It always goes back into the show to help improve the show, help get Danny a actual internet connection one day, hopefully.
Planning's tough. I should do more of it, but here we are.
Here we are, anyways. But let's move on to hashtag What's the Pick. This is our Twitter outreach program. If you tweet it, we will pick it. I don't think we have any new ones. I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah, me too.
You know who does have new cards always in stock, Danny? That's the Mana Base over at Fusion Gaming, who's also our sponsor. So this seems to just be the pack that Spencer tweeted that he said it was impossible to pick. I'm clearly a Stone Cold Master of Magic, and I snap-picked Luminous Bonds without really thinking about it, and everyone agreed. So thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will see you all next week with Spencer Howland.
Have a good one, guys.